I'm Catherine Zox, your social worker with a microphone, and you're listening to WCDB FM University at Albany. As Andrew and I were talking about earlier, we have one guest this morning, and she's here with us, Deanna Hooper, MSW, founder and editor of SocialWorkHelper.com. She is an adjunct professor at Meredith College teaching social welfare policy. Deanna has a master's in social work, concentrating in management and community practice, as well as a certificate in nonprofit management. And we were really interested in what that certificate in nonprofit management is. But first, we're going to be talking about this website that she has created and the mission of the website, SocialWorkHelper.com. Welcome to the show, Deanna. Nice to have you on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. So you've created this very unique website, SocialWorkHelper.com. Tell us, what is the mission of SocialWorkHelper.com?
Well, when I created the website, I had went back to college to get my MSW. I had been in the field of social work for a few years before I decided to go back to get my MSW. And when I graduated, I found that it was difficult to find employment. And so not being employed, I was disconnected. Well, I felt disconnected from the social work community. I also couldn't afford to maintain my membership dues to the professional association. And so I was looking for a place to connect with other people who needed support, and I couldn't find a place.
Okay.
So I decided to create a place.
I want to put that in a timeline. What year was that? When did that happen?
This was in 2010. I graduated in December 2010, and so I was unemployed for a year. It took me a year to find employment after I graduated.
All right. So
it was during this time that I had all this time on my hands that the concept of Social Work Helper developed, and I started working on it, and it came to fruition.
Well, you make it sound so easy, and I know it's not. I know it's not. You're sitting there and don't have a job, obviously creative, smart, you want to do something. Specifically, what did you have to do? Because, people have those kinds of ideas. Oh, I'd like to get like you did, like a website together, get people together, but they never seem to be able to get it off the ground. What did you do specifically? Do you think that? Yeah.
Well, fortunately for me, I have always been fascinated with technology, and I am I'm self-taught in a lot of areas when it comes to technology. I decided during that time to take a few classes, and I had intended to get a secondary bachelor's degree in IT, because I really wanted to develop this idea myself, because, with a limited startup budget, it really helps if you know how to do a lot of things yourself versus having to hire someone when you don't have the capital to begin a project.
You are so right. I have to tell you, I am sitting here and I have this radio show for 2 years, and I am dependent on Andrew to do the board because I can't do it. So what you say is really true. The more independent you can be, and Andrew would like me to be independent, but I'm not, so I have to call on his resources to do the board. So that's really true. And I just want to, your website looks like somebody who knows IT. To be honest with you, it doesn't look like a social worker website. It's very cool.
Well, when I describe myself to people, I would have to say I'm more geek than social worker because, I think it's life experiences and things that I endured growing up that led me into the social work profession. Originally, I was an engineering major. Science and math was the areas that I did well in, but my life experiences really drew me to social work, and so that's how I ended up with my first social work degree, my first bachelor's degree in social work, and life in the public service.
Yeah, well, you've combined the two, obviously, the engineering, the IT, and the social work. We should talk about, because, I want to talk more about also you personally and how you got into the field, because obviously that had your personal life had a big impact on you getting into the field of social work, which is not uncommon with social workers, I don't think. But what is the mission? So people know listeners know what we're talking about. What is the mission of the website?
Well, it has kind of morphed from its inception. The network actually launched. It took some time to put it together, but it actually launched in March of 2012 on World Social Work Day. And it has kind of been a process of where I've gotten feedback, and it has kind of just morphed into what it is today. And so the basic mission of it, one, is to really highlight what social workers are doing, what's going on in the profession, and really put a social work lens to current issues that are going on in the world. So, social justice issues, and really have some social work input in the national media perspective. That is our goal, my goal with Social Work Helper. But also to give social workers a place to commune and get support and resources. It has two different components. The first component is the online magazine, which is what you see when you first go to the website. But if you go into the website further, there's also a professional networking community where people from all different walks of life, and I don't really require that someone have a degree, but if you're in the business of trying to increase outcomes for your community or your neighborhood or your country, this is a place that I wanted to create for people to get together to share those resources and support for each other, to share training material, to have policy discussions, to have practice discussions. And so it has that professional networking community to go with it.
Deanna, are you getting a buzz? Are you getting, how many, do you know how many people access the website and how many, because this is, obviously it's online, so it's a global thing, I assume, not obviously.
It is actually a global thing. I had not actually released all the statistics because sometimes I'm just still amazed. But why not do it on your show? This may be a good opportunity to really let people know how Social Work Helper has grown from its inception. In December 2012, I would say that's about March would make it a year, so its 9th month. It's averaging about 500,000 hits per month.
That's amazing.
And I expect that to grow even further over the next couple of months. Right now, there's a website called Alexa.com. This is where you can go and see where any website, what its ranking is, how does it rank among all websites on the World Wide Web, and also how it ranks in your respective country.
How do you spell that? Alexa?
.com. That's exactly correct. And so that's the place where many businesses go to scout other websites to see what startups are growing. And pretty much that is your measuring stick of how you rank amongst the world. And so right now, Social Work Helper, and we're at, like I said, March will be a year. U.S., we're in the 200,000 range, and for the world, about 1,600,000 is where Social Work Helper is ranking at this current moment.
Okay, those are the numbers. Now, what does that mean in terms of how everything functions, how you bring people together? I mean, does that, when you say 500,000 or 200,000 hits, so people will look at the site and it could be
It's basically saying that out of all the websites on the World Wide Web, Social Work Helper is like 200,000 in the U.S. It's actually like 202 and some change in the U.S., which means that's pretty good. And it would be easier to understand if you actually plugged in some of your favorite websites to see how they rank amongst others in the world, like Wikipedia and all your bigger websites would be like Facebook is number 1. Wikipedia would be like number 5. And so that's how you kind of gauge the idea of where your website is ranked. But it's a great tool.
That is a thing, yeah.
It's to kind of see where you are, especially if you're a startup, or just to engage or to see who is coming to your website. Where is the majority of the folks coming from? Are they U.S. based, or are they in another country?
Well, can you share that with us? I mean, like for the socialworkhelper.com, is it in the United States?
Well, most of my users are in America, but the network itself has workers, has social workers or community workers or just users from 6 different continents. All continents are represented, except for, of course, like Antarctica, but there's folks from Asia. More are from the UK and Australia. Canada has a strong showing on the network, and there's quite a few in the Slavic area. And it's so interesting to have conversations with social workers from all these different places, because you really find that we have more in common than not, because many social workers who are working for government or nonprofit agencies around the world are really struggling with austerity measures, the cuts to services, and being able to provide human services to the folks in their community. So that is a global issue right now at this time, but it's so hard to really see the global issues, because it's very rare that we get to really have those conversations with people, not just outside of our circle or other social workers in our state, but it's very rare that we have conversations with social workers in another country. So that's one of the things that I'm glad to be able to help facilitate with socialworkhelper.com.
Well, how does that fit into, because not only do you have the website, but you are a professor or an adjunct professor at your Meredith College. Like, your students, how do you get them involved? I mean, in taking that information so that it helps them as students and helps them when they go out. Are they BSW students or MSW students?
Yes, I teach a BSW class, and I do have some psych majors in my class who are taking social work as a minor. And one of the things that I try to facilitate with our policy class, because one of the things that I think that social work has done has really focused on practice and has kind of moved away from social justice issues, which, with my students, I try to show them how policy dictates how we are able to practice in our profession. And that having these policy discussions, looking at social welfare programs and the current issues of our day, like entitlement reform. Many social workers today feel like those issues aren't a part of their practice. Maybe they're a clinical social worker, or maybe they're in academia, and they may just look at social welfare programs as an eligibility issue, whereas if Medicaid is cut to where it no longer covers mental health services, that policy decision is going to affect practice for clinical social workers who may only take Medicaid clients.
So you're helping them make the connection, which is really important, between policy and being a clinician. The thing is that I found, and I'm probably guilty of it as well, is that, direct practice, clinical practice is sexier. There's something about it, for me anyway, and being connected to I'm better off. I think I do well when I'm one-to-one with a client, for instance, and so there's something to that too. I mean, the issues are exciting, and the issues become sometimes more exciting if you're dealing with the client directly. I don't know if you've experienced that with your students.
Well, I've worked in child welfare, and I've worked, most of my work has been in direct practice. However, when I went back to school, I got a macro degree in community practice with the nonprofit certification. And what I found in my nonprofit and my macro internships is that I can affect change on a greater scale from a macro lens than I can in my direct practice relationship. So being able to facilitate conversations on a larger scale and impact policy decisions, and impact, because most policy decisions are a result of what the community feeling is on it.
What are your students? I want to ask you. I have so many things I want to get through and to ask you, so I am going to interrupt you. But your students, I'm really curious. What's the makeup of your students? Because that has changed over the years. Now, I got my degree in the '80s, and now I'm here at the university doing this radio show, and there are differences, I think, in where the students come from and what their goals and their objectives are. Have you seen that? What are your students like?
Well,
who are they?
My students, Meredith is a private university. So without making a whole lot of assumptions, and with my new class, I'm really just getting to know them. It's mostly traditional students and not non-traditional students. Older students, I may have one non-traditional student in my class, but the average tuition per year is about $40,000 a year. So I guess it ranges on how someone wants to interpret that.
Yeah. Well, you could compare it. We're here at the University at Albany, a state university, so I would assume the makeup of the students here at the School of Social Welfare would be different, obviously, than the ones you have who have to pay $40,000 a year. And
that's pretty high considering I live in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But that's what average cost of private tuition is here in North Carolina.
What about male to female? Are we getting more men, or are you getting more?
I have all females in my class.
Not surprised. We have, our ratio, and I don't know what the ratio here is at the School of Social Welfare, but, it's a bigger class probably, but it's mostly females as well. So we're still kind of a female-oriented profession, would you say?
Yes, I would agree with that. And what I have learned through Social Work Helper, when talking to social workers around the world, that is not the case in the majority of the world, especially in the UK, in India, and in the Slavic nations. They're still pretty male-dominated, which is very interesting.
I guess we have a different history. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. But, yeah, that is interesting. And I did know that about the UK, that social workers in the UK, they have big organizations there.
Yeah, social workers really are held to a more esteemed position than maybe social workers here. They kind of classify social workers in the UK as a highly skilled job, where they don't here in the U.S. so much. Even though it is highly skilled, it doesn't receive the same recognition, I think.
Well, I think traditionally part of that reason is when you have a profession, at least here in the United States, that's dominated by women, it never, just because women are the ones who are in that profession predominantly, then it doesn't have a high, isn't looked at as a highly skilled profession. I think the nursing profession suffers from that as well, although it's changing.
Yeah, and nursing and teaching is changing as far as their esteem and also their pay ranges as well, but social work seems to be lagging. But I also attribute that to social work is on the very conservative side of embracing technology.
Well, you're the one who's, I can see that, who's about to change that. I mean, let's mention the website again, because whoever is listening, they should, socialworkhelper.com, as they're listening to the show, they can go to the website. So what would you say? I mean, the website's amazing. It's just, I was going through it and all kinds of information. One of the things that you had, which and now I'm not surprised after talking to you, but 5 useful apps for social work students. That kind of caught my eye. Can we talk about that for a few minutes?
Well, one of the things that I think that as social workers we need to integrate more, I think technology is a great tool. It can be used for good or it can be used for evil, but it's a powerful tool, and if we use it to its maximum ability, we can really help ourselves make our jobs easier, and also make it easier to communicate with each other and share resources. With all the budget cuts that are coming, we are going to have to be more efficient in how we deliver services if we want to be able to maintain good practice. And so with the 5 apps, I really wanted to give tools to social workers that I use every day, like Second Nature, and many other professions use every day, like Second Nature. They're just regular tools that I don't know how I would get by without them. And they really help, in my opinion, to balance privacy and security, because with a USB drive, you can lose that very easily. And with that loss, the material that you may have on there as far as any research or any client information could also be lost as well.
All right, so let's talk about them specifically, because you've got them listed, and I'd like to go through those, because you're talking about that's one of the goals of your website, and I which I think is great. Kind of merging social workers with a little bit of, not a little bit, but helping them to understand how the technology can help them in their practices in terms of what they want to do and what they want to accomplish. Okay, so Dropbox is one. What's that?
Dropbox is like the best tool that I use on everything, because most people have a mobile phone now. You have some sort of tablet or iPad. You have your home computer. You either have your work computer, and you have your library or whatever computer you use at school. What Dropbox will allow you to do is to create a online storage system where you have an online account, and their security has increased, and it's pretty good as far as security-wise. And what you can do, you can authorize certain devices. All the devices that you use, you can authorize them, so that if you say you're working at the library and you save a project, if you save it in your Dropbox online, it automatically syncs and updates that file on your computer, on your iPad, on your mobile app. So now you can never have to say, oh, I left that file at work, or I left it on the computer. I don't know what happened. You always have a current file that's archived and synced with your current device.
All right, so is this the first thing that you teach your students?
Well, I put the information out there. I let my students know what resources. One of the things that I always tell my students is that I'm not there to tell them what to think, but give them tools so that they can learn how to problem solve themselves. I want my students to learn how to problem solve and seek resources, and so I guide them more so than tell them that they need to use XYZ, but I guide them.
Okay, so you show them, and you also show them by example, obviously. The Dropbox. That what's the second one? You mentioned 5, or on the website there are 5 of them.
I don't remember the order, but Evernote is another great resource because basically it's another type online storage system, and it's organized like an electronic accordion file. If anybody who's ever scrapbooked or collected recipes or anything that you've had a box that you used to throw scraps of piece of paper in so you could collect and remember where that is, Evernote is like that, except it's electronic. So what it does, it allows you to put a little extension on your web browser, and as you search the internet, whether it's research, recipes, pictures, articles, whatever it is that you want to collect, it allows you to collect it and organize it. And it does the same thing as Dropbox. Whatever device you're using, everything is always there, so you never have to worry about putting things in a certain location and not being able to access it. As long as you have a mobile device or some kind of electronic device or a desktop computer, you can access it.
All right, so you can access it wherever you are in the world, wherever there's no excuse. I mean, all that information is there, right there.
Right there at your fingertips.
Yeah, literally.
One of the best ones that I think is a good one for social work that I would recommend, especially for those who are in field and working in practice, is Google Voice. Google Voice is a mobile app that you can add to your mobile phone. Doesn't matter what operating system you're using, whether it's Windows, BlackBerry, Android, iPhone. It will add a second line onto your mobile phone.
Deanna, I want to ask you, I thought of something while you're describing these apps. How does this work in terms of like privacy issues? Let's say as a therapist, and you're doing clinical work and you're seeing a client and you take notes and you use these apps to save your information. Is there any kind of a problem with that in terms of privacy issues with clients and
Well, with how I normally answer that, and I usually use the same thing as a USB drive, because with any type of electronic device or any type of storage system, nothing is foolproof, and it has to be used with some level of, you have to protect it. with anything on a mobile phone, there's always, or any type of iPad or computer, I always tell people you have to use additional security. Like for my Google products, in which I always recommend Google products, Google allows you to have two-way authentication if you choose to use that particular function, which means even if somebody gets my password, there's another app on my phone that it scrolls every 30 seconds, the password changes. And for my two-way authentication, I have to put in my password and that second password. So it's always constantly changing to add an extra level of security. So with any security or even if you put it on a notepad, if you lost it, it's the same thing as if you put it on an electronic cloud storage and let your password get compromised. So with nothing you use is going to be foolproof unless you try to put extra security measures in there to protect your client information. And that's the best way I know how to answer it.
What about agencies? Are they using electronic records now, or are any of the agencies doing that?
Some are. And as you know, in the United States, every agency is pretty much different from county to county, from state to state. And the tools and technology that a county uses depends on their budget. And so some are very well versed in using technology and electronic files, where some are still using paper files. Here in North Carolina, I've worked in agencies that have been more technologically advanced, and then I've worked in agencies that are still using paper files.
So we're in transition, I think, just to where it's very similar to the rest of the world. I mean, medical files, are also kind of some are in the process of being electronic files, but not all hospitals or agencies use them. So I guess
it just kind of depends on the budget.
Yeah. All right, you have another app, also MindMeister.
MindMeister, and basically MindMeister. When I was in my nonprofit, getting my nonprofit certification, and the reason why I chose to do that, and which is going to tell you about MindMeister. One, I wanted to, with social work, there's a lot of courses that we don't get in our core, which are classes like financial management, marketing. Those type of classes are needed, especially if you're going to be an administrator. And so a lot of the classes that I took for that nonprofit certification were with other disciplines, like public policy. My financial management class was with the MBA school at Carolina. So I really got to interact with other disciplines and see what other disciplines use for their tools and how they communicate and organize group thinking. And mind mapping is one of those technologies that are very well used in other disciplines, especially those by project managers. It really helps to visualize group thinking, and it also has ways of collecting a lot of information and being able to organize it. And so that's one of the tools that I thought would really benefit social workers, because we do a lot of group thinking, whether it's a CFT, a child and family team meeting, or whether we're having a system of care meeting where you're meeting with a bunch of providers trying to come together with a plan, or you don't have a plan. Being able to use something other than lugging around flip charts and scraps of paper, and being able to really just collect that information using a mind map technology, email that information out, and then you're able to really track information over time that may help us when we're coming to evaluation and looking at best practices. So those are the ways that I feel like technology would be beneficial, because it's very hard to track charts, paper charts, and seeing your progress over time, because most of the time when you're finished with those, they go in somebody's closet or on somebody's shelf.
Yeah, and it gets lost. Are you the only one who's doing this? I mean, Deanna, you sound like you're the only social worker I seriously.
Well, like I said, if I really had to describe myself, I'm more of a technology person who does social work. And so my thinking is really merging the two things that I'm most passionate about and trying to relay that to other people. So I don't know if other people are doing it. I have not seen that in my field, but that's kind of where my thought processes come from.
Well, it would seem to me on the website, you could get, if you got 200,000 people in the United States, 500,000 people worldwide who are, checking in on this website, that maybe there'd be other people, who are combining the two, because it's so necessary.
But I think there are, and as you see with the link that in that particular article that I did find 3 other social workers who had social work sites that integrated app technology with practice, and so they were. I included those links to their articles so folks can check that out. I mean, one was Mobile Social Work, which he's in Germany. One was Social Work Tech, which I think he's out in California, and he focused on clinical social work. And then the other was Social Work Tab, which I think she focuses on education. So there are people who are very interested in enhancing social work with technology, but the profession on a whole has been very conservative. I think where I have been able to get more information out is having more of a technical background. I'm able to use the technical side to really use the World Wide Web to my advantage.
Well, you're doing it. I mean, to me, it sounds it's unique. I mean, you will change the face of social work, I think, if you keep doing this, because this is something that. Well, obviously, you just started it. I mean, you started this website, in the spring. Can we just kind of switch a little and talk about, because
Sure.
It's an opportunity to kind of get this stuff out is on Social Work Day, which is in March. And there's also the UN Social Work Day, which is in March as well, I guess, right?
Everything is in March. Lobby Day,
yeah.
And Social Work Awareness Month is in March also.
So, what are we doing in March? Actually, I'm speaking at the. I'll tell you what I'm doing. National Association of Social Workers, their yearly conference here in March in Albany. So, yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, we hope to get at least 300 to 500 people usually, and the dean of social welfare will be speaking, and then a third speaker. So that's exciting for me. It's exciting for us. But okay, so what's happening though in terms of what are the plans? Anything that we should know about social workers or any of?
Well, one of the things that Social Work Helper is doing, we're in the process of putting together a think tank. And basically what this think tank is to look at social welfare programs. If anybody who's been looking at the news or has looked at the budget, the fiscal cliff, any of the politics, entitlement reforms is one of the things that's constantly being addressed or where one side or the other wants to cut. It's an area that's going to be reformed. And one of the things that Social Work Helper and the folks that I work and partner with, we all agree that reform is going to happen, but it shouldn't happen without some social work input. Traditionally, social workers have been present when groundbreaking legislation as far as the social safety net has been crafted. But for some reason, social work seems to be missing from the national conversation when talking about the social welfare programs that provide the safety net for our most vulnerable populations. So what the folks that I partner with, what we're doing, we're in the in the process of putting together some position papers to make recommendations on how we could get more efficient delivery of services in particular programs, identify ways that we can find savings, and just make recommendations on how we can incorporate better technology to help reduce costs, and just kind of looking at a range of issues for different programs and submit that to our legislators. It's just a way of possibly saying we're social workers, we implement these programs, and we're on the ground floor when it comes to serving the community, and this is what we feel should happen.
Yeah, we're the soldiers, the foot soldiers.
So that's the main thing that we're working on right now.
So, Deanna, all right, we only have a few more minutes left, so I want to make a sure, and I also want to, for those of you who have been listening, we have been talking to Deanna Hooper, MSW, founder and editor of socialworkhelper.com, and a professor at Meredith College. I have a question for you. You know, you mentioned in the beginning of the show, and maybe, you know, I'm not sure we have enough time to do that, but listeners to the show are often wondering, should I get into the social work profession? People are contemplating it. You said the reason that you got into social work was very personal. Can you just share that with us? Like, that was the impetus for you to actually get a degree, get a master's degree in social work?
Sure. I mean, I got into social work because I wanted to change a few things. You know, I'm a single mom. I had my daughter at 16, and my mom was a single mom, and her mom was a single mom. And, you know, even though I have had the opportunity to receive some of the best education that I could in the U.S. and in this great nation, there were a lot of challenges in order to receive that education, which I fear is that young people today who may have found themselves in my same position, I think that ability to be able to escape poverty or escape the circumstance that you have that you're in, I'm finding that it's very difficult to escape poverty these days, because all of the programs and things that were in place that helped me to get the education, to finish high school, to go on to college, to go on to graduate school, those things are leaving. People don't feel that those programs are necessary anymore. So that's what led me into social work. Otherwise, I had other plans, but even though I think if you choose this profession, most people that I've talked to has done so because of something that has happened to them or something in their background that makes them feel the need to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. And for the many of people who may not be able to graduate high school because they had a teen pregnancy or some other issue, I think I have an obligation and a duty to speak on their behalf. You know, neither one of my parents had the opportunity to finish high school. So I feel obligated that my job is to speak for those who can't, speak for those who may not have the education to articulate the difficulties and the challenges that they face in trying to feed their families, trying to get an education for their families. So that's why I choose to stay in this profession. Is it the easiest profession? No, it's not. But it's needed. It's necessary, and that's how I ended up in social work.
Well, obviously, it comes, a very personal experience. And I imagine that people look towards you and look at you and think about, well, I mean, you are an inspiration. I mean, you kind of walk the walk.
Well,
you do.
For a long time, I was not forthcoming about my circumstances. You know, I was very, my my gift was my intelligence. And I think that's one of the things that really helped me move forward, because when you're having to, the stress of other things that you're having to deal with, if you're just an average learner, you're really going to have difficulty maintaining a standard in school. By me being a little bit more advanced, I was able to handle high stresses, but just display an average student. And so I went to private school for college, and it was an adjustment. It was difficult. It was stressful. You know, I was fortunate that I got scholarships and things of that nature, but it was very difficult. And so for me to, you know, with the culture and climate that I was in school with, it wasn't natural for me to disclose my family background, my family history. It wasn't until I was much older, until I was much more comfortable with not being ashamed of my circumstance, and then realizing that, hey, you know, despite the odds, I've done pretty good for myself, until I came to a point where I was content with me. It took me a while to get there. So I don't want to take too much credit for being an inspiration, because it was a journey for me.
Well, we're going to give you that credit. You don't have to take it. We give it to you because I think it is an inspirational story. And I think you didn't. And also, I'm glad you mentioned that, because, you know, I think each one of us has to take what we have as whatever our strength is. And let's face it. I mean, obviously it comes across. I've been talking to you for 45 minutes. You're really smart. You're really intelligent. And so, yeah, that's a huge strength. You've got people who maybe have more average intelligence, and then they have all the other stressors, and it's very difficult for them to achieve what you've achieved, obviously. But if you have those skills, it really behooves you to take them and do something about it, which you did, and you're really very impressive. It's been great having you on the show, and thank you for sharing all the information.
It's a pleasure.